Welcome to the Leaderonomics Show, and today I have with me Hamish Taylor, who started off with Procter Gamble and now he's a master thief, right? Hamish, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So tell us a little bit of your background, and I know you started off your career with Procter Gamble.
That's right, yes.
Many years ago. And how, what happened? I mean, how did you end up with Procter Gamble, and how did you ultimately end up as a master thief?
Yes, that's a very good question. Well, I guess I went, like most people, into sort of traditional route from university and decided what do I want to do next. Didn't really know. Knew it was something in business, and Procter Gamble for me were the people that were going to train me the best. Right. So I went to Procter Gamble because I was told that within a year I'd be running my own business and having a profit and loss account.
And did you?
I did. I mean, that's the nice part of it. The downside is it was a toilet cleaner that I had to look after, but you learned something, I guess, from even doing that.
True.
And for me, that was just, to be honest, it was world-class training. I decided that for the first few years of my career, what I wanted was somebody that was going to teach me. And that was the place that I went to start with.
Okay.
And then from then on, really, just very difficult to describe. I guess I get bored easily. I don't know, or either that or people don't get fed up with me quickly, one of the two. And decided after about 6 or 7 years there that I wanted to get experience elsewhere. Was a consultant for a few years. Okay. Then fortunately fell on my feet and became head of brand management at British Airways. That's right. At a time with some good innovations, so got to do some interesting things like putting beds into aeroplanes in the mid-90s.
Like the flatbeds and so on.
The flatbeds and stuff, yeah. So, and that was great. It was a glamorous industry. It was certainly more glamorous than toilet cleaners anyway. And from there, really, to be honest, I reacted rather than, I didn't have this great career plan where I said, and by the time I'm 25, I'll be doing this, and then I'll be doing that.
Right, so as opportunities opened up.
Absolutely, as they opened up. So I got a phone call one day saying, do you fancy your first managing director job? And I said, well, yes, I'd like to try it. And that's when I took over then as managing director and later chief exec of Eurostar. The same thing happened later on when I got a chance to run a bank. And
so that was with Sainsbury Bank.
That was Sainsbury's Bank as chief exec. And then I guess about 7 or 8 years ago, I went through a phase where I thought, I've done the chief exec bit and I've enjoyed it, but a lot of it's managing upwards, and I actually quite enjoy running businesses and doing turnarounds and change, and I'd kind of lost that a little bit. And I just decided to do my own thing. And I guess what I was known for, if anything, was taking ideas from one sector to another, or from one area like a discipline to another, whether that was from another industry or from sport or whatever. And I decided to play with that. So, I mean, when I put beds in aeroplanes in British Airways, we used a yacht designer because they had better ideas than, as when I wanted to do queuing at the airport, I used Disney. Why? Because Disney know about queuing, we don't, we're an airline. And so that's what I play with. So Master Thief actually was a title that was given to me by somebody, by the Inspired Leaders Network back in the UK, based on the idea that I guess I've never had an original thought in my life, I just pinch from everybody else.
Well, that's the idea, right? Connecting two things together. But as you look back at your life, right, what are some of the challenges or some of the defining moments that made you who you are today? I
think for me, the variety is certainly it. I mean, I think the moving from Procter & Gamble outside into the other world was a big step, because I'd only learned one way of doing things, I'd only learned one model. I've subsequently discovered what a brilliant model it was, and they are one of, if not the most professional organisation I've ever worked for. They were fabulous. But I think for me, stepping out and saying, actually, it's not about building your career in one organisation. Nothing wrong with that. It just wasn't for me. For me, it was trying to take those skill sets into another place. What I enjoy in life is being the outsider. I love going into the bank as the non-banker, the railway as the non-railway man, the airline as the non-airline. Why? Because you can add value by being different and trying to open their eyes. You need a mixture of the real experience in there, but if you can do something, bring something different in, that's how you can add value. It's better than trying to be an expert in the industry.
And how did you get that appetite for wanting to do that? Take something from outside, bringing it in.
I suspect probably a very small threshold when it comes to concentration or whatever. I like variety. I like to change easily. To be honest with you, I'm just an enthusiast, and as such, it's almost like I was going to say I've almost shot my bolt within 2 years. 2 or 3 years in, I've done what I came to do. I've been enthusiastic. I brought in some new ideas, and I'm kind of chomping at the bit for the next change, really. And so I got kind of used to, therefore, doing it that way. And it's fun being the outsider. When I was at Procter & Gamble, I had the problem brands. Why? Because they're much more fun. Why would you want a flagship? Why would you want a successful brand? Somebody's already made it successful. And if you want to change even the wording on the packaging on the back of the pack, you've got to go to Cincinnati for the decision. Take on a problem brand, and as they always say, problem brands are orphans. Nobody admits responsibility for it, and you can play. So I had much more fun with problems. So, and that's what attracted me to things like Eurostar. I mean, Eurostar was losing £200 million a year when I joined as chief exec. Some would say, well, why on earth did you accept a job like that? For me, it was a great challenge. Great
so were they, I mean, every job, it seems to be that you take has significant learning, right? I mean, it's a whole struggle thing. I mean, what are some of the lessons that you learned at British Airways, at Eurostar, at some of these places?
I think there's a number of things, and what I've found is there's a core of lessons learned at Procter Gamble that have then almost been built on over time.
What were some of those?
Well, I think the core ones for me have always been about, first of all, keep it simple. We overcomplicate things. You know, we create jargon, we create processes. Actually, it's very simple, which is, how do you put the customer at the centre of your decision making? What's the benefit to the customer as a result of what you do? Don't go and brag about your business. Don't go and tell them how wonderful your product is, because they don't care. What they care is, as a result of your product being great,
how does it help me?
How does it help me? So you define that, and you create that as the core at the centre of what you do. The benefit to the customer and the reasons to believe it. You then use that as the basis for how you lead the business. Because people talk about leadership and what's great leadership. Well, the starting point is, well, where are you trying to lead people? Because if you haven't decided that, it doesn't matter how good a leader you are, you've got nowhere to go. And the customer promise becomes that core. So that was number one. Learned it at Procter & Gamble, put it in at British Airways, at Eurostar, places like that. That's got to come from customer insight. Customer insight is not sit back and collect data, read reports, get the graph coming in each month. Customer insight is spending time in the customer's world and actually watching what goes on and learning from that. Those two together create the platform for then creating the change and driving the business forward. After that, there's a whole series of things that come in to do with leadership. Number one, the whole one about pinch ideas from other places. Who else is an expert at this? And it doesn't matter whether it's another business or another industry, just find somebody who's good at it and use the lessons from that. And I'll use ones from sports coaches, from the arts, from the armed services, anywhere, I don't care. As long as somebody's got a skill set that I don't, come and show me. I'd love to learn it. Other areas, clearly, you'll hear lots of people talk about communication, obviously keep it simple. Make it easy was an interesting one from British Airways, which was, if you really want to influence the business, don't just come up with an idea and then communicate it and get people to understand it. Help them to take the first step. And if you can get tools that will help them to actually get over that threshold of the risk of taking the first step forward, then they'll go with you.
Okay. Now, speaking about pinching ideas, you know, many people try that. I mean, they go to a GE, they go to a Procter Gamble, they say, oh, great idea, let's pinch it. But somehow it doesn't work out as it is in many of these other organizations. Is there a skill that you need to actually pinch ideas?
I think you've just got to keep an open mind to it. Don't take it literally. People take it too literally, and I think that's a problem. So I mean, what you need to do is take the basic idea and then translate it. So for example, if I was looking at how I build trust with my customers, go and look at, I don't know, why do you trust a pilot? Why do you trust your car to start in the morning? Why does your dog trust you? Any scenarios like that. And then take the principles. Now, okay, why does your dog trust you? Because you feed it. That doesn't mean we're going to go and feed our customers as the literal translation. You take the principle. The principle is because you get the basics right, okay? And it doesn't matter how much else you do. If you don't get the basics right, you're going to fail. That's the lesson you take back in. Car starting, okay? Why do you trust your car to start in the morning? Well, because it's German is what most people say. But once they've got over that, it's things like, because you have it regularly serviced. Okay, so take that to a customer relationship now. What are the principles of a great car service? You check it out on a regular basis. You don't wait till it's broken before you do it. You look at all the key component parts that make up that car and where's the wear and tear on them, and you get an independent expert to give you their opinion. You could apply all four of those straight back into how you manage your customer relationships. So it's not a literal translation, it's the principles behind it.
Let's talk a little bit about innovation. I mean, you know, everywhere you seem to have embedded some form of innovation, like you know, the flatbeds with British Airways and so on and so forth. You know, how do we, I mean, is there a process to drive innovation in an organization?
Is there a process? I think, yes, there is. There's an approach, but I wouldn't call it a process. And the reason I wouldn't is because we get too hung up in that. Look at what makes a great 100-meter sprinter. There's lots of things that are there. One of the things is they focus on the end point, not the process. If you focus on the process, you don't really innovate because success for you is going from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 rather than what you were trying to achieve at the end. So for me, it's about how do you create a focus on the end point that allows you to innovate? And that's where the customer benefit bit comes in. So if you can take a focus on the customer benefit and use that as the basis, you've now asked yourself a different question. I gave an example earlier on today about British Airways business class. We used to go and say, here's today's product, how are we going to make it better?
Yep.
And innovation was about how do you take the seat or whatever it was and design something better. You're doing the same thing as all your competitors. If you really want to innovate, you need to ask yourselves a different question. That's where the customer benefit bit comes in. The benefit became arrive ready for business. What do we mean by that? The key moment of truth for a business traveller was how do I feel at 6 o'clock in the morning when I step off this aeroplane?
Right.
Am I ready to go and do a day's work?
Yep.
Okay? That's when you know if you've had a good business flight. What does that mean we've got to be good at? 3 things, either giving people more sleep, or refreshment, or less hassle. 9 words, arrive ready for business, more sleep, less hassle, refreshment. That becomes the core of your innovation, because now instead of saying, here's today's product, how do you make it better?
Right.
You're now saying, how else could we help people arrive ready for business?
True.
It's a different question,
Yep.
and a different question gets different answers.
Exactly.
So that's how new ideas come along. The arrivals lounge, a lounge after the flight when you can have a shower in the morning. Serve the meal in the lounge before people get on the plane. Then they've got more time to sleep. Lots of new ideas come along because you're asking yourselves and your business a different question, and that question starts with the customer benefit, not here's today's product.
Right. Right, fantastic. You know, if somebody else, like, you know, a young fresh graduate who just graduated from university and they want to become a Hamish Taylor, they want to replicate.
I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
What advice would you give them?
A couple of things, to be honest, and it's all in hindsight, remember, because this is
obviously.
I don't believe people when they tell you they have a career plan and they can plan their career, because I have no idea what I'm doing from one day to the next, let alone year to year. I think there's a couple of things. The first one is be willing in the first few years to go somewhere where you'll get a really, really good training. You won't necessarily get your dream job first of all. If you do, fantastic, good luck to you. The chances are that what you've got to do, what you want to do is get a good grounding, particularly in the things you don't know. Procter Gamble for me was fantastic, gave me that. So once you've got that, where do you go next? I think for me, since then, it's been about, I was going to use the word selfish, and I think it's probably an okay word to use. Be true to yourself. You know what you're good at, what you're not so good at. Concentrate on the things you're good at. Nobody gets successful by fixing their weaknesses. They get successful because of their strengths. They stop their weaknesses holding them back by improving on them, but the real success comes from what they're good at. You get to be a successful person because of what you're good at. Therefore, how can you put yourself in situations and environments where you're using your strengths to the best ability? And that may mean choosing particular job types, certain career types, certain organisations you want to go into, but that's what you need to do. So the reason I do what I do now, I ducked out of corporate life 6 years ago, as I said, to do my own thing. Why? Because I do what I'm enjoying now. I don't know whether I'm any good at it or not, I just enjoy it. And I became selfish, and I said, look, you only live once, you might as well enjoy it, guys. And what do you want to do? Get to 65, having had a great, solid career, and then start living? No, start living now. Right away. Because if you do what you enjoy, you'll be better at it, and then you'll be more successful.
And final question, if you could address a group of CEOs and give them one piece of advice, what advice would you give them?
Oh, I'd have to go back to the customer promise one. Get a real statement of the customer benefit and the 2 or 3 things you need to be good at to deliver that customer benefit. Keep it as short and simple as possible, 9, 10 words, and make sure that every single member of your organisation knows it and can recite it back to you and can understand how their job can play a part in it. Whatever function they're in, everybody has a role to play in it. And if they don't, you haven't put the customer at the centre of your business.
Fantastic. We're here with Hamish Taylor here at the London Speakers Bureau Conference. Hamish, thank you for being on our show.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Here on the Leaderonomics Show.